Andrea, it's a pleasure to have you here today at the Policy Center for the New South.
The pleasure is all mine. It is great to be here all the way from Rome. We just had a really excellent discussion, a very good, intense 2 panels of a discussion on value chains and connectivity.
I witnessed, I listened to the discussions. They were indeed very, very interesting. But what I want to do is take this discussion about value chains and the green transition in a political level or a geopolitical level, because this is what I'm most interested in. So first, to start off, since you work on the Mediterranean, you direct a policy program for a preeminent Italian research institute. So what I want to know is, as a practitioner, as a professional, what is your lecture, what is your analysis of the current geopolitical tensions in the world right now and their impact on the zone that we share, the Mediterranean?
Absolutely. The shared Mediterranean is a key area where the geopolitical trends are really manifesting and touching both of our societies, both Italy and Morocco. I would say that if we think at the global level, there are 3 key elements of geopolitical tensions. The first is probably the most obvious in terms of the conflict that we are seeing in Ukraine, the unilateral and invasion by Russia, which broke all of the established norms of legal coexistence within Europe. This is definitely a key geopolitical challenge, a key geopolitical conflict, which is impacting the Mediterranean in a number of different ways, from food security to also energy, of course. But we shouldn't forget 2 other macro trends which are particularly worrying in terms of geopolitics. The first is China, the rise of China, which of course has implications also on the Mediterranean, but on the entire global system, and on Europe, of course, because Europe has to find a way to live with this growth of China and, of course, with its relationship and alliance with the United States. The third challenge, which is also in front of our eyes, and is not something that is happening, that will happen in the future, but is happening really now, is the climate emergency. The climate emergency is impacting the Mediterranean in a significant manner. We know that the Mediterranean is a climate change hotspot, in the sense that climate change is impacting this area much more so than in other areas, actually 20% more in terms of temperature increases compared to the global average. And this climate change, we know, is a threat multiplier. It will impact every element of human living and coexistence, but also in terms of stability, internal stability of states and the social contract. It has significant implications.
That's indeed concerning, because these 3 macro trends are the recipe for a perfect storm, and they do interact between each other. So the invasion of Ukraine, the preeminence of China in the geopolitical scene, and the climate change are all crises that interplay and intertwine between each other. And the Mediterranean basin, the north or the south, are both impacted by these macro trends. But I would say that the South Mediterranean, the North African countries, the Sahel, I think the European Union is trying to frame the Sahel in like a neighbor, like not a close neighbor, but a second door.
Neighbor of our neighbors.
The neighbors of our neighbors. So I know that the strategies in the Sahel are also trying to be framed within the European Union strategy. So what I want to ask you is, we talked about climate change, we talked about the green transition, but what's really concerning for me is what I'm hearing about the European Union trying to be more geopolitical, have a defense-oriented approach amidst the conflict in Ukraine. Europe is trying to strategize and think of a defense strategy, of a geopolitical identity, a hard power type of identity and actions. But I don't see the North Africa and the Sahel being included in this strategy. And we also see that with the conflict, with climate change, with the preeminence of China, we can see that North Africa and the South Mediterranean basin has been put, on the borders of the debate. What can we do as policy planners to include the South Mediterranean in these debates? How can we do to include the global South in the European Union strategy of being more defense-oriented and more geopolitical?
Thank you. I think there are a number of elements to kind of unpack here. It is absolutely correct to say that the European Union has an aspiration, or I would say that had an aspiration even before of the Ukraine crisis and the invasion of Russia, to become more of a geopolitical animal, a geopolitical actor, as the Commission has framed it. This has encountered a number of problems. We are all aware, of course, of the challenges in the past for Europe to develop a united foreign and defense policy.
Yes.
So there is definitely efforts in this direction to try and overcome the challenges of having 27 member states to decide on in terms of foreign and security policy. We also need to remember that the European Union, the strength of the European Union has traditionally not been its hard power capabilities. It has been its soft power capabilities, its economy, its investments. And this, I think, is something that we have to, as policymakers or as think tankers, we have to always keep in mind, that it's not a decision of either one or the other. It is trying to fill a gap that we all are aware of, and of course, especially since the invasion of Russia, in terms of increasing the capabilities and the integration in the defense forces of the European Union. However, this does not mean that the European Union will adopt a hard security approach to all of its challenges.
Oh, okay.
The focus on Ukraine is absolutely one of building up defenses to deter further aggression by Russia. In the southern Mediterranean, there is, I would say, on the one side, an opportunity that comes from this crisis, in the sense that there is a renewed effort, a renewed interest, and a renewed necessity to look at the Mediterranean as not only an area of challenges or of threats, as it has been in the past decades, let's say, since the Arab uprisings, for example, but also as a new area of indispensable investments and integration and of opportunities, perhaps. This is clear in terms of climate change and renewable energies, in the sense that the integration between the two shores is possible and is needed if, of course, we want to diminish our dependence on Russian gas and as well maintain our commitments for for diminishing fossil fuel use and meet the commitments of the climate change agreements. At the same time, I think that, and my final point would say that if we think of the Sahel, which absolutely you are correct in highlighting, is growing in importance for Europe, for migration, for security, for conflicts, but also for the nexus between climate change, migration, and conflict itself.
Exactly, yes.
I think that as policy researchers, we really have to underscore that these challenges, and especially the challenge of terrorism, does not have a hard security response.
Yes.
To counter the terrorist threat, to counter the radicalization threat, we need a much more holistic set of tools. And these set of tools are much closer to the original European assets of soft power, economy, and investments. So when you ask me what our role can be, it is trying to find the correct balance between hard security necessities to counter hard geopolitical threats, but at the same time not losing track of the importance of investing in societies and jobs and social contracts, because it is only like this that you can engender stability.
Exactly. I mean, I am a strong advocate of the security development nexus in the Sahel, but also when it comes to Euro-Med relationships. Of course, in the past decade, this has been a securitization of the discourses and the political postures of the European Union towards the North Africa, having a strong focus on mitigating illegal migration, having reporting and political analysis on political stability, on terrorism, strengthening PVE, CVE efforts, whereas the soft approach, the cultural dialogue, the political dialogues were less areas of investment and interest. But I can see this changing now because of this three macro trends that you're saying. European Union is turning its eye on North Africa, not only because of the Ukraine conflict or the power rivalry with China that we're seeing in North Africa and the Sahel, but also because of what we talked about today and the conference that you came and so brilliantly presented and chaired, the green transition. We see that For instance, Italy is signing signed a major gas deal with Algeria. We see the United Kingdom being really interested in fostering a partnership on renewable energy with Morocco. We're talking about Morocco supplying something like 8% of the power. The power generated for the United Kingdom households. There's also a lot of investment on green hydrogen in Morocco, in North Africa, in the Sahel region. Major gas discoveries in the Sahel between Mauritania and Senegal. So I can see this area in the coming decade becoming more and more interesting for the European Union. But this securitization of the discourse, the postures, the narratives have to change, because I think that we, as North Africans, as Sahel, civil society decision makers, citizens, we long and ask for a dialogue on culture, on science, on art, on political dialogue that is based on equality and common understanding. So my question to you is, how do you see this green transition fostering a new deal? And I mean the new deal in the historical type of way, maybe a new political deal between the South Mediterranean and the north part of the Mediterranean.
You're absolutely right in the sense that there has been traditionally an imbalance in terms of Euro-Mediterranean relations.
Yeah.
It was mentioned today at the conference, the Barcelona process, which I think that it englobed within its ideal a very positive effort to try to launch a similar Euro-Mediterranean dialogue, which is on equal footing. Mm-hmm. This was overcome by a number of events and was in some respects maybe even forgotten. I think today is the time to go back to these kind of ideas, of course updating them in terms of the real world that we have in front of us. And there are a number of initiatives that the European Union has already set out on the table. Some of them, if we want to assume the geopolitical angle, have a geopolitical clout in the sense of trying to counter China or trying to counter Russia,
Yes.
if I think of the Global Gateway, for example. Others, however, are also provide significant and concrete benefits to collaboration. So the Green Deal, the Global Gateway, the new agenda for the Mediterranean are all blueprints that can, with the sufficient political will and with sufficient inputs also by think tanks like ours, to really redirect this narrative and counter the securitization, but also widen the engagements.
Yeah.
And I think that while if you mentioned correctly Italy's agreement to, or deal with Algeria and for the gas, which also had a component of investments on renewable energy within Algeria, which is a very important novelty in terms of agreements, bilateral agreements between European countries and North Africa, is something that can be replicated in other countries. And this also is completely conducive to similar agreements being made with Morocco, for example. Not only UK, Morocco, but also Italy, Morocco. There is enormous potential of collaboration in terms of supply chains, food, fertilizer,
for sure.
energy as well,
For sure.
renewable energy. So these blueprints are on the table. It is now the role, the job of us researchers, but of course also of policymakers and the international organizations to make sure that these are directed in a sense that we internalize and learn from the lessons of the past and also of the errors of the past. Mm-hmm. It is time now to really think and underscore the Mediterranean as a shared Mediterranean space.
Yeah, it's a shared space.
This can only happen through genuine dialogue, through equal dialogue, and also through a focus on areas which have traditionally in the past, if we look at history, created a culture, a Mediterranean culture.
Yeah.
So you mentioned culture, you mentioned arts, you mentioned these kind of soft policy areas, which is something that Italy as a country full of art and has a very big department of cultural diplomacy should be taking the lead on.
I mean, yes, I do agree with that. I do agree, and I think I always say that Italy is sometimes humanity done right when it comes to culture, industry, the way of life, and also because of the fact that you are a European country, but you also understand the ways of life of South Mediterranean countries. You kind of share the same culture, the same traditional values that we do share in that side of the Mediterranean. So I think it's good to work on those soft aspects and to build this common understanding and not look at the South Mediterranean as this foreign people, but rather neighbors that share a crucial space. And again, I'm coming back to the green transition and climate change. Of course, a lot of anguish. We can feel a lot of anguish and a lot of fear and anxiety when it comes to climate change and the catastrophes and drought and what we're witnessing in terms of temperature changes and everything that is looming ahead. But in some sense, it is also a huge opportunity to realize how much humanity is one and that the challenges are common. So it is indeed a golden opportunity for us as a Mediterranean basin to unite and to understand that the political differences are insignificant when it comes to the challenges ahead and the opportunities that can be done. Because when you talk about a shared space, there can also be shared prosperity. With a successful green transition, we can build and develop the South Mediterranean states that are in dire need of growth, of economic growth, of employment, of industrialization, of education, health, etc., etc. And the green transition and the tremendous opportunities that this green transition can have can be a great vehicle for that. But of course, I am no specialist of the green transition. You do work on it a lot. My question to you is how can we foster this green transition? What are the main areas of cooperation? What can be done as of today in terms of fostering and accelerating this green transition?
It is a very complicated question and a very complicated set of tools that need to be put in place for this to come about. The green transition, the objectives of the green transition, of course, predate the emergency that we are witnessing today with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which in some respects, shifted a bit the focus, shifted a bit the time frames as well, unfortunately. However, in terms of the green transition, we have the enormous potential of renewable energy in North Africa, in the Middle East and North Africa. And you mentioned the idea or the deal between Morocco and the UK for selling electricity. So this is one area which clearly is one area of priority for investment. And it's a priority area for investment not only for a transactional agreement that Europe receives energy and we will do an investment. It is something that is broader. It is more holistic in the sense that we need to also think of job employments. So these factories, these new investments and these shorter supply lanes, chains as well, all carry with them a potential which needs to be brought into reality of new employment opportunities. Because of course, we both work on geopolitics as well. We cannot close our eyes to the real challenges and the instabilities within the Middle East and North Africa, but also in some respects within Europe itself. Europe itself also is suffering from unemployment. If we think of Italy or Spain, generational changes in terms of lack of replacement figures in terms of births. These are all issues that need to be put together within this framework of the climate emergency and the green transition, and to be able to find ways to integrate the problems in the sense that it is no longer, again, this transactional give and take relationship. It has to be much more of a long-term investment and one based on the understanding that threats in the Mediterranean and Middle East, whatever they are, whatever their drivers are not going to remain in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. They will sweep into Europe as they have done in the past, and the same goes on the other side. Exactly. So this is really the responsibility of Europe, I would say. My last point would be that this area is the European Union's neighborhood. The European Union needs to be the actor, the key actor driving this, independently from other actors, including the United States, perhaps in some respects. Europe is a strange animal, a strange geopolitical animal, also has some dysfunctions within it, but we are working on them. And I think that our approach to the Mediterranean, especially if we take the southern European countries, which have what you were mentioning in terms of Italy, this longer history or deeper appreciation for developments in the Mediterranean, the Middle East, we need to have these countries really being in the driver's seat.
I agree.
And hopefully through this better knowledge or this more nuanced understanding of the various challenges and drivers of instability within this region, we can create a shared and really integrated space. But this goes two ways. It is not only north-south integration. We need south-south integration. And this is a key challenge for the region that we know very well.
Yes, I agree. I agree. This is the key challenge for us because when we look at the European Union, it's obviously in terms of political integration, in terms of soft power, in terms of human rights, political traditions, culture, economical development. It is an example and something to admire and also to replicate. Maybe not with the same norms and the same historical process, but in the South, it would be ideal to attain that level of integration. And that's why there's the ASFTA. That's why we strongly advocate for integration of Maghreb countries to collaborate more, to communicate more, and to exchange goods and knowledge and people more, because I think this is the way forward. But again, I think that the common challenges that we're facing and we're going to increasingly face together is going to build common interest. Because as a realist, this is what I believe. I believe that this common interest is going to build understanding, because I heard a declaration of the Spanish, the president of the European Commission,
Joseph Borrell,
who said that the European Union was a garden and the rest of the world was a jungle.
Very unfortunate remark, to say the least.
It was quite unfortunate, but it also spoke to the geopolitical understanding of the European Union in the last 10 years that thought of itself as a fortress of prosperity, of human rights, a fortress that everyone wanted to enter, especially the qualified or non-qualified workers, economical migrants from the South. And today, with climate change, with the macro trends that you so acutely analyzed, the challenge have become common. And as you also said, now in the European Union, you are facing, maybe not at the same scale, but the same problems that we've been facing for the past 20 years. Unemployment in England, increasingly people have to go to food banks. European populations are hit by inflation, by drought, by political extremism, political instability. So the challenges are becoming more and more common. So the need of understanding becomes urgent. I think that we need to talk to each other in an equal manner and to understand that although we are nations and different nations and that there is the European Union and the South Mediterranean, I think there's a need to further to expand, to expand the fortress, but to open the fortress and look beyond this geopolitical understanding. So to end this very interesting conversation, and it's really interesting to talk to an Italian counterpart and have your perspective. What I want to do with you is for you to give us a perspective, to tell us what do you see happening in the next 10 years in the Mediterranean space. Do you think this green transition is going to succeed? And do you think that this area that we love so much is going to be an area of cooperation, an area of common understanding and dialogue? Or is it going to remain a space of power plays and power struggles and income and development inequalities?
Well, that's a million-dollar question, as they
Yeah.
say. Looking into the future in the next 10 years, I think we will have a mixed bag. I do not want to be overly optimistic to say that the Mediterranean will become an area of peace and prosperity and equality. We need to be realistic. There are many challenges that remain, both in the north and in the south of the Mediterranean, that need to be overcome. One of these challenges, since you mentioned the unfortunate remarks of the EU High Representative, Josep Borrell, is also overcoming this mentality. It is clear to everyone in the younger generations that Fortress Europe is a complete misnomer. It is impossible. There is no such thing as a Fortress Europe in a globalized or an integrated world in which we are all facing such big challenges. So overcoming these conceptualization, these narratives which are still present in the older generations, which are the ones that are in the driver's seat in some respects, is a key priority. This understanding of the climate emergency, I think, will be an important driver to overcome this perspective. But in the next 10 years, I think we will pass through a period of intense power plays, of global power plays. Russia will not stop or give up its influences in North Africa, and China will not either. But in this respect, while Russia is a bit of a special case because of the clear violations that we have seen and really cannot be accepted or cannot be forgotten, I do not think that in the next 10 years we will be going back to a business as usual relationship with Russia, for example. When it comes to China, there is a bit more of a gray area. I think that Europe needs to position itself in such a way that it is not a direct antagonist to China. When we talk about a shared space of prosperity in the Mediterranean, we also have to be realistic in the sense that the money, the investments, the infrastructure is not all going to come from Europe, private sector or governments. And there is only one actor out there that is able and willing to do these kind of investments, and that is China. The Belt and Road Initiative. So while, of course, there are elements of geopolitics that need to be carefully looked at for Europe and the United States in terms of countering the Belt and Road in some respects, we should not make this into a direct clash. I think that the Belt and Road Initiative and the Global Gateway can be integrated, can be complementary in some domains, with Europe looking more at investments on green energy, on technology, and China looking more at the big investments of infrastructure. This is perhaps can seem like rosy dreaming, but it is, I think, it motivates people like us who work in this field to think about this and really believe in them. Because otherwise, the risk will be that the Mediterranean will become not only a climate change hotspot, it will become a global power competition hotspot, and everyone will lose with this in such a scenario.
I agree.
Perhaps not everyone in the sense that people, countries that are more removed from the Mediterranean, but definitely Europe and North Africa will be heavily impacted, and including also Eastern Europe, Eastern Mediterranean, and all the way even to the Gulf and in Eastern Europe. So again, it is the responsibility of the governments, the people and the societies and the private researchers who inhabit this space to make sure that we do not take our eyes off the ball and become complacent in a new era of global great power competition. We have seen the implications of this in the past, in the Cold War in the Middle East, and North Africa has been severely damaged and hit by this great power competition. We do not want this to happen again, and as Europeans and as an Italian, I would say that I would not want to be part of such a great power competition. So we need to really be courageous, maybe even utopian at times, but push for integration, push for understanding, push for less of an ideological approach to problems. And this includes China, this includes many other issues in the region as well. However, it is not only Europe that can solve all of these problems. It has to be, it takes two to tango, as they say. It has to be a joint issue, a joint initiative, a joint understanding. And I think that there is there is some positive examples of this coming about. It is still too early to say. I think, however, to answer your question very directly, in the next 10 years we will have a mixed bag of possibly things getting a bit worse before they get better.
Well, thank you. I couldn't agree more, and thank you to. We end the conversation on the need for more multilateralism.
Absolutely. Multilateralism is in crisis, clearly, because if we look at the biggest United Nations or biggest multilateral organization, they're in crisis. But multilateralism as a spirit, as an idea, as an approach is the only way. It's the only way to overcome and contain these ideological approaches and to overcome the political challenges that have been with us for many years, unfortunately.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Andrea, for this discussion.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.